trustees, not counting the 4 presenters. So we may have more people joining us. Maybe parking's tight. Maybe people are stopping at the reception downstairs on their way up here, or who knows. But I know that this is, I think, personally, a really interesting talk. And I know it's been designed to have a degree of interactivity and help you have some experience that helps you live our partnership that is so it's as much fun for you as it is for us. Many of you I already know, but I'll do my normal introduction. I'm Janet Carlson. I direct the Center to Support Excellence in Teaching. We are in our 3rd year of the series of Pondering Excellence talks, and the emphasis is on the pondering. I ask all of our speakers to do something that helps you engage in a professional conversation. And it's been our goal to mix people from Stanford with people beyond Stanford, because that's what keeps our work real, and that's how we support excellence in teaching. And so I'm really excited because I already know we've got the partnership represented, we've got the research office at the district, entrepreneur in the Silicon Valley, sort of? How do you want me to label you?
I hope it'll be MIT OpenCoursera-centric
Okay,
high schools.
all right. I think of you as more than that, but...
In Spanish, Chinese, and English this autumn, next autumn.
Okay. So I know I have CSET staff. You don't have to open your mouth. You can keep on chewing. And I have 2 people I don't know. Can you label yourself in some way?
Sure. I'm Jessie. I work in the high-tech industry, but I was just telling them that I spend quite a my time teaching little kids coding, data science, and all that. So
Excellent.
yeah.
I want to talk to you later about a new project we're pondering. And
I'm Sneha Ali. I'm with the Saratoga Union School District.
we are so happy to have you here. Have you been to a talk before?
This is my first.
Okay, I did not think I
been
were.
to a summer.
I did come for a modeling, mathematics modeling.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Good. Some big picture overlap with that. This is how we're like doing the work in a district. All right, we have 3. I'm actually not presenting. You're only going to hear this intro from me. But we've got 4 excellent presenters. Hilda Borko is faculty member at Stanford, and we'll be starting the talk off. And this is work that she launched a decade ago in Colorado and has taken on a new and evolved life in our partnership with SFUSD. Michael Jerry Shore is a doctoral student who's been working on the project 2 years now? Versus a year, okay. We didn't have you last year. Sorry, it just feels like you've been here with us for that long.
Are you good or bad thing?
It's very good. You're fully integrated. Lizzie Hull Barnes, our illustrious leader from the district, who got into this work before she even really knew what it was, way back in the proposal writing days.
That's true.
And I don't think has regretted it.
No, I really value it.
And our brilliant mathematical colleague, Allison, who has embraced professional development in ways she probably never imagined possible. So each person is going to talk about different aspects of the work. It's based on a couple of models that we're going to go. Come on in, you're perfect timed.
Thank you.
Perfectly timed. And then we're also going to bring in a separate piece that is funded specifically by the partnership. That's an enhancement in the work and an example of how in the work in math education at San Francisco Unified, we're all working really hard toward coherence. So I think with that, Hill, I turn it over to you, right? Okay.
So I get the job of trying to help you initially make sense of all of the different pieces, or giving you a broad sweep overview of the different pieces that then people will sort of help you understand in a much more interesting experiential way. So I will try to keep my comments short. So this is, as Janet said, it's a partnership. It's a partnership between our center and the math department at San Francisco Unified. And the partnership, the basic thing that we're trying to do is help San Francisco build leadership capacity around professional development for mathematics, specifically as they have rolled out a new task-based curriculum. And we brought to the table a couple of models to help them do that, that as Janet said, actually it's been 15 years.
Sorry.
That's
Time
okay. Time flies. So, as Janet said, I started this work initially in Colorado with colleagues there. So this kind of starts to give you an idea of the complexity. It's a big project. The Stanford team involves myself and Janet that are the PIs, principal investigators, two postdocs, 4 graduate students. Oh, you know what, we didn't put Rebecca on there yet. 2 PD associates and 1 project overlord, we'll call them.
She likes the power.
Rebecca's the newest addition to our project, and we're still working out titles and exact roles. Then San Francisco also brings a big team. You'll meet Lizzie today, the math supervisor. Allison, the math content specialist. Emma Trevino is also at the district level. She's considered the math project manager. Her role has been a broader role to help them roll out the curriculum. 5 math coaches that we're working with and 14 math leaders, and we'll talk about the different roles that they play. And then this is a National Science Foundation project that was heavily brokered by the SFUSD partnership, and Laura's the coordinator for that partnership, the partnership between Stanford and SFUSD. It wouldn't have happened without her.
No.
Yeah. Yes. So basically what we brought to the table are 2 interwoven models. A model of professional development that's designed to help teachers deepen their understanding of mathematics, learners, and teaching, and a model of leadership development that's designed to help site-based teacher leaders build the capacity to conduct professional development in their buildings. And I'm going to describe more or less briefly the 2 models that we brought to the table, and then you'll start to understand, I think, as the session evolves, some of the ways that the models have been and are being adapted to fit with the goals and the vision that San Francisco brought to the table for mathematics learning and teaching in classrooms. So this is the first model. It's a model of professional development that we call the problem-solving cycle. It's a cycle of workshops that's meant to be cycled through every semester. It starts with teachers coming together, solving a mathematics problem. It's really more than solving, it's unpacking the mathematics of a problem, and then developing lesson plans so that they can teach the problem in their classrooms, teach with the problem in their classrooms. They then teach lessons using these problems, and they're videotaped. The next 2 workshops are workshops where we bring clips from the video back into the professional development to study aspects of learning and teaching. One of the ways that we've adapted this, the original version of the problem-solving cycle, all of the teachers worked on one task, so we selected a task that met content goals in the 3 grade levels of the middle school. This is a middle school-based project. One of the things that we've done with San Francisco is identify specific mathematical tasks in their curriculum. One of the appeals of the project itself to San Francisco is that their new curriculum is a task-based curriculum. So it's very easy for us to use their curriculum. One of the things we had to do, though, is adapt so that we're now working with 3 problems simultaneously, 1 at each grade level. And the videos that we pick, the video clips that we pick, are video clips that will help them think about the vision of mathematics learning and teaching of San Francisco Unified. And I think Lizzie's going to talk a little bit about that vision. The second model that we brought to the table is a model of leadership preparation. So essentially what we do is that in the summer academy, the people come to this leadership position with various levels of experience and expertise, both as mathematics teachers and as leaders. From a lot of experience to fairly new teachers within the district. So the the first thing we do is we bring them together in a summer academy that's about 3 to 4 days. And we just introduce them to the models, introduce them to the notion of leadership in this context, and some of the skills that they'll be developing, skills like leading mathematical discussions with teachers and leading video-based discussions around teachers' own teaching. And we have them go through various activities that will give them experiences with those models. Then the real core of the leadership preparation is bringing the teacher leaders together for a day as a whole group, all of the teacher leaders that we're working with, and having them plan their next workshop. So the first, what we call leader support session, is focused on the mathematical tasks. They'll be doing things like working the mathematical tasks, really looking deeply into the mathematics, looking at multiple solution strategies, multiple ways of representation. And they'll also then be planning lessons and rehearsing some of the activities that they plan to do with their teachers. And then they go ahead and they conduct the workshops. They're videotaped, we videotape everything. After they've all taught the workshop and teachers have taught the lessons, and we videotape those lessons, we bring them back for the second leadership support meeting. And this is the leadership support meeting to help them plan the video-based discussions and activities around learning and around instruction. We would do things like model a video-based discussion, have them experience the video-based discussion, then debrief it so that they have a sense of what we were doing as leaders of those discussions. Again, we have them plan and we have them rehearse. One of the things that we learned specifically in the work with San Francisco is the power of these rehearsals. In general, when the model was designed first, the first set of video-based workshops focused on students and student learning. The second focused on instructional practices. One of the things that we've learned as we work together is to kind of slow that process down, because for a lot of the teachers, task-based learning was very new, the curriculum was new, and the idea of listening to students and trying to understand what they knew and what they couldn't do with tasks was where we needed to really focus our attention. So much more of the attention went on that particular aspect of the classroom learning and teaching. There's also a big research component. That's not the main focus of the presentation of today's session, so I'll just talk briefly. Overall, it's a design-based implementation research, which just means that we're keeping track of all of the decisions that we're making, all of the ways in which we're adapting the model, San Francisco's adapting the model, and we're cycling through these adaptations. So each time we conduct a problem-solving cycle and leadership preparation group of sessions, we then think back to how do we want to adapt it for the next time? How do we want to fine-tune it so that it will better meet the needs of the district the next time? We also have a number of embedded comparison studies where we're analyzing the classrooms of the teacher leaders, a couple of teachers from each of the schools that they're working with, and we also just finished a huge wave of data collection where we videotaped classrooms of teachers who are in the other professional development that's going on in San Francisco, so that we can do some comparisons of what learning and teaching look like in the two set of classrooms. And then the piece that Janet mentioned, the practical measures, is the piece that's funded by the Coherence, by the San Francisco-Stanford collaborative partnership, and it's just an added piece that we were able to integrate that Michael's going to talk about. And with that, I will turn it over to Lizzie.
Okay. So I have been fighting a cold for a really long time, so if I cough, forgive me. I'm actually setting a timer here. Okay. So again, my name is Lizzie. I'm the math supervisor for San Francisco. Some context that you may or may not know is that we have 56,000 students in 135 schools. We are a pre-K-12 unified school district. This context is middle school. We have about 150 middle grades teachers of mathematics in 21 schools, some K-8, some comprehensive middle schools. So that's the scale of the work that we're doing, and the problem-solving cycle sits inside of 7 of our comprehensive middle schools. So that comparative study that Hilda was talking about is sort of us trying to make sense of what are the professional learning models across our system. What I value about the partnership, and we're going to get into some of our frameworks in a moment, but I was actually just talking about this partnership feels so unique to me because we are pairing with Stanford, who's helping us to think about implementation and practice on the ground. So very often how practitioners experience educational research is that once something has been written, we might reference it 5 or 6 years later, for example. It might influence some of the thinking and some of the design of a district. But this is a situation where we're working with the researchers right now who are helping us to learn, make sense, get better, ask their own questions. So it's a model that is the two organizations working hand in hand to get better at what we're trying to get better at, which is high quality mathematics for all learners in San Francisco. Do we have a clicker by chance?
I can click for it if you want.
Okay, thanks.
The Michael very short.
Okay, can Michael?
Right here.
Nice. The old school clicker. San Francisco has developed and iterated on a task-based curriculum. Many districts have approached in the age of the Common Core. Wait a minute, I don't want to get too, I gotta watch my time. Okay, we adopted a scope and sequence aligned to the Common Core when the state of California adopted the Common Core. And this is a scope and sequence that is a K through Algebra 2 scope and sequence. We also have pre-K units because we are a pre-K-12 district. Every unit within our curriculum is built upon 4 rich tasks that are stitched throughout the unit. We had hundreds of teachers from all grade levels. I was one of the 5th grade teachers at the time who came together and chose from among some of the most sort of rich tasks that were available to us. And we built lesson plans and pedagogical recommendations that sit underneath and behind those tasks. And we are now in our 4th year of iterating on the curriculum, and based on the teacher feedback from the field, it's getting tighter. Based on our own sort of vertical reading of the curriculum, it's getting tighter. And we're very soon going to be releasing our curriculum open source. So you can see the unit plans, but that's one of the things that we're moving towards. And so it's really important to us that a partnership about mathematics starts from that place of a rich mathematical task. And how we're defining it is that a rich math task takes time to solve and lends itself to collaboration in multiple perspectives. Robust use of these tasks creates the context in which students build multiple representations and communicate their reasoning. We wouldn't want a math partnership where the foundation is about procedural fluency and isolation, for example. You know, one of many things. So we're really working to use the Common Core as a lever to deepen the experience of mathematics teaching and learning in San Francisco. One of the frameworks that's important to San Francisco, this is content agnostic. This is a framework that was developed in our Division of Curriculum and Instruction with leaders from humanities, science, and mathematics. Is our dimensions of teaching and learning, and I know we have copies here, and I believe we're going to see a video-based discussion that references the idea of agency. Is that the one that you guys are doing?
Authority.
Not quite yet. Authority. Okay. So this framework describes the attributes. What would we see a teacher doing? What would we see a student doing in a classroom that, in our case, is a mathematically powerful classroom? So, for example, we're talking about agency, authority, and identity is one of the things that we're really looking for. Students are not passive learners of mathematics, and in the shift away from the way that mathematics has been taught historically, very often students were sort of absorbing, oh, here's how I think mathematically, I do the algorithm the way my teacher taught me. That's not mathematical reasoning. So when we talk about agency, authority, and identity, we're talking about the students as the makers of meaning, as the learners, as the reasoners, as those who are doing the work. The foundational work underneath these documents include the TRUE framework, Teaching for Robust Understanding, as well as some of the California standards for the teaching practice. There's like a zillion footnotes on the bottom of the document. When we pass it out, you can sort of reference that. But it's really important that all of the professional development that we do references this framework. It's in our district strategic plan. Another thing that's important to us when we think about middle school math specifically is the thoughtful progression of mathematics and really capturing the moment of the Common Core to make that part of what we're doing. It used to be that students, and often teachers, in our experience of mathematics when we were kids, we learned discrete skills in isolation and didn't see how they connect across domain and didn't see how they apply to real world situations. So one of the really crucial progressions in the Common Core connects from work that elementary students are doing with fractions through ratios and proportional reasoning into high school functions. So that's an example where we are really, really working to build the content knowledge of our teachers. You may know that San Francisco is the largest urban school district that has also ended the pervasive practice of tracking at middle school. This feels really important because we hold that these are some of the most important mathematics that a person can learn and make sense of, that they will apply throughout their lives. Students can still progress to AP Calculus in our course sequence. I'm just putting that as a footnote here because we're really holding that middle school math as a place that we want to spend deep and important time with our teachers and our students. So I think I already referenced this, but a big idea when we are working with teachers is shifting what it means to be good in math. Many of us still use or have experienced ourselves the language of mathematics that sort of betrays a sort of sense of fixed mindset about math. Some people are good at math, some people just get it. We know from researchers here in Stanford that that's something that we are working to shift. And so we want to see less of this, the test taking and the stress that is associated with math, and more of students reasoning and making sense, defending their own reasoning, making sense with multiple representations. That is the way that mathematics is used in the world. That is the way that people apply mathematics in the world. And we want to make sure that our classrooms aren't setting up this weird laboratory where kids experience math totally differently than the way that's actually used in the world. It is a discipline that our teaching and learning has a long way to go to sort of, okay, we have a long way to go. And last slide, I already referenced this and I think Hilda referenced it as well. One of the beautiful things I believe about this project is that regardless of how powerful a teacher's classroom is, doesn't mean that they have the skills yet to guide professional learning with their peers. I can be a great teacher and not have the skill set to run, to create the environments where my colleagues can learn together. So one of the things that's really inspiring about this project is, as we referenced, the teachers rehearse, they choose a video clip, they rehearse how they're going to share it with their peers, and we see over the space of that arc and that cycle, the teachers themselves also start to speak with more of the agency and more of the voice, saying things like, we versus the math department or Stanford. Like there's more and more of that sense of this is our project, this is our collaboration, this is our work. And ultimately we hold that the school is the unit of change. Whatever I decide in central office doesn't mean anything if math teachers aren't together doing math and thinking about the learning outcomes for the kids in their building. I went over. Sorry.
It's okay, all good.
So one of the ways, as we've already been discussing, that we're putting the vision that Lizzie described into action is through this partnership of co-designing and co-facilitating the teacher leadership preparation meetings with our teacher leaders from these middle schools. And so as Hilda explained, the second and third, second and third workshops that happen at sites are based on video-based discussions, and therefore the second and third leader support sessions are also based on video-based discussions. And so we have video-based discussions in those preparation meetings, and the teachers rehearse their own VBDs. So we are going to, the reason that we do that is video-based discussions make teaching and learning public, which is not a norm yet at all of our middle schools, but it's something that is really, really important for teacher learning together. And they also ground, the reason we use video for that is they ground the conversation in a common experience for teachers to make sense of together. So we're gonna do a video-based discussion with you right now. The purpose of this particular video-based discussion is to use video of students engaging in a math task to deepen our common understanding of what student authority looks and sounds like in the math classroom. This VBD we prepared for one of our TLPs, this one, the third of the semester, the first semester of this school year. And to prepare for the VBD, teachers made sense of the dimension of authority, agency, authority, and identity that Lizzie referred to earlier. So we're going to be watching a video of 8th graders. In 8th grade math, part of that string of conceptual understanding that builds from elementary through high school is linear relationships in 8th grade. And one of the ways that 8th graders work on linear relationships or with linear relationships is with these tile patterns. And so they'll take a tile pattern, a growth pattern like this, represented with tiles and represented in a variety of ways, with an in and out table, with a rule or equation, and with a graph along with the tile pattern, and they can go in all different directions and recognize the connections between them. So in the task that we're going to see students working on, they're given an incomplete representation. So this is, in this case, they have an incomplete table, which you see here, and one figure from a tile pattern. It's figure number 8, which has 2 tiles. And what I'd like you to do right now, what we'd like you to do right now is work with a partner. So maybe if you want to move to a table, or it might be a group of 3, whatever, or a group of 4, and start to try to generate the equation or rule that governs this particular pattern. We're going to give you a couple of minutes to do that.
So I'll give out just one per pair.
Yeah, sure.
I'm an English teacher.
Got this.
Try to generate.
You guys go first? Do you want to go together?
So I don't get the figure. Are we supposed to fill in? If this is 4 times 3 is 12.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out where is this located?
Well, there's this what we
Oh, let's do, I have to look.
and then build.
I'm not gonna use it for time.
I mean,
I don't
Well, what I'm seeing is that these 2 things are
I
from the
see,
same
I
pattern.
this is figure.
So you don't know, I mean, see, it's, well, I do know the figure 8 has 2 tiles.
I think it's okay.
So I know
Seems like
the green
they're
is 2 tiles bigger, and that's why.
That's what I don't.
Well, 3 has 12 tiles. Figure out the 8 figure has 2. So what's happening?
Your number
But if
for
you're
you, it's
increasing
there.
by-
Yes. So this is.
Oh, by 3.
I didn't even know.
But there's only 2 tiles?
This is the figure.
Okay,
so, yeah, that's helpful. Just
so this is.
I wonder.
Yeah.
Right, this is a representation.
So if there were a series of figures,
So figure is.
there would be a first drawing, a second drawing, a third drawing. For example, the third drawing has half.
So this is art.
What we can see is the eighth drawing, which is this one, has 2.
That's what I said.
And it goes like this.
Okay, so what does it decrease by? What's the pattern?
So it might have increased by 2, and it makes this 10, 16, 8,
So that would be one pattern.
So that makes sense to me.
I don't, I'm not sure I know.
Yeah.
what the issue is. I mean, I understand how these.
Yeah, that's what I-
work.
yeah,
These are great. I was
So-
thinking about the equation, having to figure those out, like, oh, three's a multiple.
If that's the relationship.
But some of these aren't multiples of each other. Some
Generally have a figure.
So is it like a -2?
Or, oh,
Of a
formula.
Formula, so the equation is formula is what students doing, so.
So,
It's going up by
what I see is that with each additional figure it increases by 2. I would imagine that the particular one is written down by 2. I mean, if it's tiles, there's a limit right here. If it's not beginning of the time,
What's our
negative.
in this?
So you
This is
multiply
to change.
Let's say
3, 12 and 8, 10.
If figure number,
So let's make that y. Or we could just say,
No, this is.
and then, I don't know, we call it any,
make it x, everything back.
So we need
I think y is like line was the independent one, this is
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so
Then,
that's
then,
then
then they
that
usually, then it seems like they usually are.
So this is
like
figure
right
number
to
one.
run, so that they're.
Yeah.
That could be x.
Here's what confuses me.
So x.
Oh, but they want
So
to come up
then,
with
so then
a
basis, so then you can say with like pound,
Is that a-
right? One more?
Just gave you one more minute,
But that
so
doesn't help, because that's just a discrete.
that's just a piece of information for you.
So,
oh, I see what you mean, it doesn't give you a standard.
so the
It just
pattern that
gives
we
you
want to
16.
describe is that the,
So,
that's here.
so the lines are
Figure
wrong.
Figure number
So they're gonna
0.
get the same
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
when it crosses the line. I'm also gonna guess that a lot of the students would just get to the point where they're looking at the table and they would not get to the.
So really, there's 2 ways to do it. You could just come back with the
Here with 2 tiles.
One minus 2, is that right? Because it's one fewer figure
So
number.
don't take that
So tiles is that right?
visual.
So y doesn't change.
Okay.
No, it's a minus.
And I just end up there.
It's,
So it's definitely x minus 2.
Plus 9. Plus 9 here,
But
that doesn't.
this has to be y plus 1.
So
Because if
I'm
we did x
certain
minus 2.
that you and your partners could make more sense of this, given more time. But given our limited time, we're gonna come back together.
Then I can get the
Y.
yeah, there you go.
Sometimes
We
we're.
both got that almost the same, it just finally came.
Yeah.
All right. It'll work. Okay. As I said, there's tons more thinking and learning that you could do with this task, but now we're gonna get to watch students do it, which is really exciting. So,
I'm just gonna mention,
yes.
just part of the reason we want you to do this task is so that you will be set up for when we watch the video and you hear the students talking about it, that you'll have kind of some context and a sense of what it is that they're talking about since you've experienced it. Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
So when we do video-based discussions, we use these norms so that we can keep the focus of the conversation on the learning and the teaching rather than the students and the teacher. So just take a moment to read to yourself these norms. We will hold you to these in our discussion if you start to stray. So, if you forget, remind you. So this, in VBD, in our TLP and in the PSC workshops that the teacher leaders facilitate, they watch the video twice, but given the amount of time that we have, we're just gonna watch once. So I encourage you to take notes if you have, maybe we can get some extra papers. For evidence of this question. What evidence do we have? What evidence do we have of these students taking charge of their learning?
Just to make notes on.
And that's our focus. This video that we're going to watch, focus question is at the top of the screen if you want to.
So yeah, so if you, any evidence that you see or hear as you watch the video, feel free to jot it down. It doesn't have to be anything verbatim, but just, yeah, please.
Want to give us a grid? Oops. Quadrants.
Oh, yeah, so the students, we will refer to them. They're seated kind of like this, 1, 2, and at the back is 3. So if you want to give evidence of something student 3 did with regards to that focus question, you can write down, just so we can keep track of who's who. So if you see them kind of sitting in that kind of semicircle.
Okay.
I thought it was 8 minus 3 minus 8.
10 over 5 equals 1.5.
I thought it was 3 minus 8. I thought it was 3 minus 8 because they both have to subtract the same way. Because 12 minus 2, so 3 minus 8. 12 minus 2, so 3 minus 8. It can't be 12 minus 2 and 8 minus 3.
Why not?
I don't know, that's great. She said, didn't she?
Oh my god. Esa es la vida más complicada. Here, that's what she gave me then.
Where's the minus? Oh.
So that equals negative 5. Which is 10
10
over negative 5 equals 1.5, but negative. So we know the slope already. No, we don't.
10. I need your negative. No, okay.
Isn't it just minus? I don't know how to use that. What should I use that stuff? For what? But what do you guys want to do? Negative. What are you guys trying to do?
I did 8 times 0.5 and it says 4. 3 times 0.5. See, I don't know.
Oh yeah, it says equals 4. Oh, but we're not done. Minus 2.
Why minus?
Cause remember when we did that? And then here it's
Oh yeah.
y.
Okay.
Oh my god. So the equation is y equals 1.5 x times minus 2. Oh, we're done.
Hold on, wait a minute. Okay, so 3 times 0.5.
Now we still need to do that.
No, because 3 times 0.5 equals 1. 0.5.
Ay, Dios mío.
So take a moment for yourself and look through what your notes, having your notes, or to jot some more notes about what evidence do we have of these students taking charge of their learning. When you feel ready, you turn to your little group that you did the math with and you start talking about what you noticed, what evidence you saw.
I saw a lot of evidence of them taking charge of their learning. First of all, the students in 3 at one point asked, where does the minus go? And so she was clearly like trying to make sure she understood where it went. But she was giving the authority to the other.
I did it 1, 2, 3 right now.
She also asked how to use negatives, so there was definitely like trying to understand how to do that.
Trying to use actually plug in numbers to see if it worked. I thought it was good,
And
taking
then realized they weren't done
charge.
with the
Then
equation.
the woman in the
And then after they finished it, she was great. She said, don't forget, we're not done, let's see if we have to try it out.
You just did calculations of that. So that was.
Number two is the one who said
Yeah.
there's something else.
Yes.
And brought up something else at some point, and everyone's like, oh yeah, we forgot. So they got that
I think she brought
There's very different degrees of
the
sort of
structure, the how to creative formula to the group. Because they were all talking at once. She just, like, she was a big deal with her. Do we have the scope of she brought it into, let's get to, you know, let's get the structure.
Yeah, because calculator was so much less difficult.
The first thing I noticed was student one, generalizing learning patterns and interesting. I thought it was starting to say, didn't use the track the same way, so she was starting to
Right.
I saw student two speaking Spanish and
You know what I mean? Like they took sharp.
Yeah, right.
You feel that was not.
So my definition of authority is that a student believes that they are also their partner. So she's a that's how she's expressing her. So she's in the classroom where she doesn't feel that would be.
It might have been frustrating.
Again, I'm gonna interrupt you far too soon.
I saw
So that we can start sharing ideas with the whole
Has
group.
to take responsibility for it is
Alright.
like fascinating.
So, we, as I said, we have not enough time to do all this conversation, but what, I'd love to share what evidence you all were talking about of these students taking charge of their own learning. What did you see?
I'll just be writing down contributions on the.
I think you should speak about speakers.
Well, they never at any point looked around like, let me ask the teacher. And so they were using the resources at their table. So they pulled out their phone at one point to do some calculations on their phone for a calculator. And one student said, oh, we're not done yet. And the -2, and other students said, oh yeah. And so they were clearly taking charge of figuring out the mathematical equation as a result.
I'd love to hone in on that, oh wait, we're not done yet moment. What does that mean about what they think about taking charge of their own learning? If they're saying, oh wait, we're not done yet.
But they understand what the end point of the task was, what their responsibility was.
So they know where they're
They
going.
need to go, yeah.
Well, they seem to have an answer at some point that they weren't satisfied with. And so they went back and kind of persevered to get to, because at the end they say, okay, we're done. We're done, like with confidence. Which actually I thought was showing kind of the opposite, like, are they really in charge or they just feel like someone's asking them to do this? Okay, check it off their list. But now that you guys brought up we're not done yet, that kind of changes.
So I think it's mixed evidence, because I think student 3 was sort of defaulting to a compliance,
Yes,
get it done.
right.
And I think the other 2 were struggling more with actual learning.
Learning, okay.
And she got sucked into it periodically.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, she'd go learn.
I would still say that she was taking charge, she just had a different goal
Okay.
for learning, because all of them in certain different ways were taking charge.
Can you say, Helen, how students
So
taking charge?
her goal was to complete it and get it done, that was her learning goal. So she was taking charge to make sure that they, or at least she, accomplished that. Do you understand it's for the others too? I think kind of the others we talked about
Yeah,
examples
I think that's okay, yeah, if I.
I just had a clarifying question. At the very end of the video, after they had come up with their equation, which was y equals minus half x minus 2, I think someone said, we're not done, and then they said, let's see. Like, so I think they were going to try out the equation to see whether or not it works. And I think that was number 1 who said, it was really quick, so it was hard to tell, but I believe student 1 was basically saying, well, we have to see if we plug in the numbers if our equation actually works.
Were the students doing the same task that we did? Or
Yes.
About the
Yeah.
same task?
Yep, that same problem, yeah. Lizzie, you had something about
I had 2 thoughts.
Yeah.
One thing that I want to put out there is that it feels important to name that an authority is not taking charge of the group or running the group, but taking charge of one's own learning, which is in your question. That just feels like an important thing to notice, that authority is a word that we're using to mean something slightly different than we often use that word in our society. But the particular piece of evidence that I wanted to pull forward is that student 2 spoke in Spanish periodically, which feels important because she believes that her voice, her language is valuable and it's how she's making sense. And
Yeah, that's an especially important piece of evidence for me, given the context of SFUSD, of having so many English language learners.
Right.
And it feels really powerful that student was able to use her own mother tongue in the math classroom. Other noticings, other pieces of evidence that you saw of these students taking charge of their learning?
I was interested in the dynamics between the three girls, and definitely I think student 3 was more passive. I'm not sure if that's her personality or how well she knows the other girls. Maybe girls 1 and 2 are closer friends, but I think she was playing along without necessarily really understanding what 1 and 2 were saying. I also think that she needed to lean over, right? At one point she was leaning over to see what was going on, and so I think physically where she was sitting was distancing herself from the task, and so I'm just wondering whether the students rotate their tasks or if they had assigned roles.
Yeah, those are really good questions, and because we don't have any evidence outside of this particular video, we don't really have answers to that. But I do want to pull out that one thing you said, which is that she leaned over to see, which to me feels very much like taking charge, because she knows that there's learning happening and she wants to be a part of it, and she's physically making that learning accessible to herself. So that, I think that you're right, that it looks different in these different students. They're engaging with the math in different ways.
Yeah. I'm basically out of space, but.
So many things. We're a little bit out of space, and we're a little bit out of time.
Maybe one more? Or?
Is there one more burning piece of evidence or burning idea that we want to bring up?
I like the fact that they said, you know, when they weren't comfortable with the calculator, they said, well, put up your phone. Because a lot of kids are like, no, you can't do that, or let's ask someone how to work this. They were very comfortable trying to find a way to make something work. And I think that's really important for learning.
Thank you. That's a great note to end on, because I think that's a piece of evidence to me of the way that this teacher has provided a space for these students to have these opportunities to take ownership over their own learning. And when we can recognize those opportunities, we can provide more of them to our students, and we can learn more about how to do that, provide those opportunities to our kids.
And there definitely was the possibility that once the kid realized I'm not familiar or comfortable with that calculator, I'm going to withdraw from the task. However, I'm not going to. I'm going to suggest an alternative and stay in it. Yeah.
And I was surprised that she felt really comfortable about getting the phone, and then she put it back and she said, oh wait, and she got it again. I think she texted, but she didn't distract it a lot, but it was really like, some schools you just cannot do that. You just can't pull your phone. They confiscate it, right? So they're comfortable about it and they don't get off the task. So that showed to me authority.
Yeah, and that persistence which came out earlier in the conversation from somewhere over here. So thank you. I think at this moment in the session, we are going to shift gears the way that we would during the leadership preparation meeting to debrief this conversation. We're going to have you take your teacher hats off and put on your teacher leader hats. If you want to click to our...
Yeah. So you would have, you were just sort of experiencing that BBD as if you were a teacher in like a workshop where this video-based discussion might have taken place, but now we're going to discuss the facilitation and sort of make that transparent. you would adopt the role of like someone who would lead one of these workshops and would have to enact something similar to what we did.
So just to put that in the context of the work that we do, we found that they've never experienced video-based discussions, many of them, so they have to first experience it. And then in order for them to think about how to then transition into leading a video-based discussion, it was clear to us that it became really important to unpack what it is that they did in order to prepare for the video-based discussion and what it is that they did in order to, as they were leading the video-based discussion. So we make this explicit transition to a debriefing activity, which I get to do. So the first question is, what did you do to prepare for the video-based discussion?
So
Take authority.
So I mean, one of the first thing that we did, I think, was think about what was the general theme that we wanted for our video-based discussion, which in this case, we knew that we wanted to develop a common understanding of authority and what that looks like in the classroom. And so we went looking for video of students who have authority within their classroom.
We also, once we had the video, we spent some time drafting a focus question, so that focal question around taking charge, but then also drafted a series of back pocket questions in case we needed to sort of elicit different ideas, or if the focus question wasn't quite bringing forward sort of those key ideas that we wanted to come forward.
So staying with that for a second, what were some of the key ideas you wanted to make sure you brought forward?
There were a lot of the things that got mentioned. So the persistence that these students show, the different ways that they show authority. So either proposing an idea, taking up that idea, leaning in physically, proposing an alternative tool. All of those we saw as ways that they took authority. Those were some of the key ones.
We had a back pocket question too about what roadblocks did these students encounter, and we felt like the calculator issue was one of the ideas that we wanted to come forward. We felt like that back pocket question might get us there. So yeah.
Okay, this is going to be a truncated debrief. So truncating it a bit and moving on.
Yeah.
I noticed, Allison, that you pretty much took the leadership role in leading it, and Michael, you took the lead in making sure that all of the key points were written down for people to think about. So how did you make that decision? What was in your thinking when you made that decision?
I think that for me, it's hard I think differently about my facilitation if I'm just listening or if I'm focused on writing. And so we decided that one of us should take the lead on asking questions and pushing for more and asking back pocket questions, and the other would take the lead on recording so that the learning and thinking was visible for everyone, which is not to say that Michael didn't step in with comments and pushing, but it was just kind of the way that we generally broke up our roles.
And I find it easier personally to ask those on-the-spot questions when I'm in a note-taking role than when I'm also trying to orchestrate a discussion and think of questions on the spot. So that's trying to play to a strength or a weakness, whatever you want to think of it.
I think, sorry,
go ahead.
One more thing. I think the division of facilitation also gives us more opportunity for noticing equitable participation. So I can have an eye on who is saying what and making sure that there are more voices in the conversation, where Michael is really focused on what is being said, so that, and the note-taking that happens as a result of that.
So there are a couple things that really stood out to me in the discussion and in the roles that you took during the discussion. I want to at least ask about at least one of them. So one of the things I noticed was, Allison, what you highlighted the example of using Spanish as particularly important to you. So what struck you? What were you thinking when you did that?
I think that, so one thing is this audience is not all SFUSD folks, and so I wanted to bring that forward in the context of this particular session. But also, I think many of our SFUSD teachers don't always value the students using their most comfortable language in the classroom, and often discourage that. And so I wanted to highlight that as a piece of evidence for students taking authority, so that those teachers can see the value of that in their classrooms, and encourage them to do that with their students.
Okay, just one other thing. when this gentleman, and I didn't ask her name.
Oh, I came late, I'm sorry, I'm Chris.
So when Chris asked some questions, and you said, you noted when that we didn't have evidence on the video clip to address some of those questions, what was going on in your mind when you said that?
So one of the powers of the VBD is having this common experience or common text to talk about, and so that's also, it provides safety because we don't know what happens before or after the video. Often the teacher is in the room with us when we're discussing their students, and so being able to go back to that norm of focusing on evidence and focusing on what is in the video kind of protects that space for that teacher and also makes the conversation more deeper because we have to go deeply into that common
So it's addressing specifically two of the norms, the evidence norm and that's what keep the focus on the focus means.
Right.
I'm gonna open it up to you to see if you have any questions of them, which is something that we would do with the teacher leaders as well.
I don't have a question, but I just have a comment that I noticed about the teacher leader facilitation, which is you constrained the conversation by focusing us specifically on just the authority piece. And I found myself when I was sharing, I was like starting to talk about whether or not their equation worked. And I was like, okay, that's not actually part of the conversation because I reminded myself to look back at the norms. I mean, at some point I'd like to talk about that, but I thought that was really helpful, so.
We actually had a little conversation in the midst of your guys' conversations about whether or not we should bring up, try not to focus on the correctness or incorrectness of the math, but then we decided, but we think our focus question keeps the discussion focused on that and not the correctness. So that was a deliberate decision not to bring that up actually, but yeah.
And part of the intentionality is trying to make sure that we highlight the different dimensions that Lizzie brought up, the dimensions of learning and teaching that are important in San Francisco. So we actually could easily have used the same video clip to focus on access to content. And there's been a number of times where we did use the same video clip with two different lenses.
I'm planning to use this video clip with our teacher leaders again during the Summer Institute as we prepare for the next school year. So with yet another lens.
So I'm trying to be more cognizant of the time. And
I like that she looked at me when she said that.
And you did, no, I didn't do it the first time. That was pointing out something that you did well that I need to do.
Oh, okay.
And just mention some of the early findings, some of the things that we're noticing. We're noticing that in terms of successes, there it is, we've been able to develop a sense of community with the teacher leaders, and the teacher leaders are being successful in developing a sense of community with their teachers. And they're getting much better at actually deciding on a purpose for the video-based discussion and specifying the mathematical and the pedagogical goals for the video clips, which helps them a lot in terms of thinking about the questions that they want to ask and the back pocket questions. We also have a couple of challenges that help us think about what to do next year. One of them, and I'm guessing this won't be a surprise to some people, to get people to focus on analysis and not just description. So to really analyze mathematical solution strategies in terms of what are the affordances, what are the limitations of those strategies. Probing for deep analysis of student reasoning and instructional practices. So what could be behind why that student made that comment? What might the student understand or not understand? And connecting very specific teacher work to the kinds of global changes that we want to see happen in classrooms. What's next?
I think it's me.
Right.
What do you think, Jen, in terms of time? Like, how much time do I have?
5:30.
But
Q&A.
we want to leave time for Q&A. Okay, I'm gonna move a little quicker, I think, than I would have otherwise. So I'm just gonna talk about this last component of this work, which is the practical measures. So SFUSD, we've kind of already seen this previously in the presentation, but has this real commitment to rich student discourse in math classrooms. And right now there's this tool called Practical Measures, which basically are just short surveys, and I'm actually going to hand them out briefly, in a sec. And they're meant to provide teachers with immediate feedback on the nature of the student discourse in their classrooms. So like what are practical measures more broadly? Practical meaning that they're practical. These are measures that are meant to take very little time to administer, so less than 5 minutes. They're to cause minimal disruption to a teacher's instruction, so this happens at the end of a class, takes a few minutes. And they're meant to provide teachers with instantaneous feedback that they can act upon right away. Accountability measures, as we know, they have their place, but one of the drawbacks of accountability measures, is that they tend to be administered sort of at the end of a cycle, at the end of a school year, and by the time that data gets back into the hands of teachers, the things they learn from it, any changes that they make won't benefit the actual kids who answered the questions on those accountability sort of metrics or assessments. So practical measures are meant to give teachers immediate feedback. Practical measures in SFUSD currently take the form, I guess we can hand these out now, of 2 short surveys. One that can be administered after students have taken part in the whole class mathematical discussion, and one after they've worked on mathematics with each other in small groups, just like in the video that we saw in our DVD. So teachers can administer these if they want. You can see on the surveys right now that their whole class is 10 questions, the small group is 12. They're more or less yes or no questions. You can also, some of them are choose the best response. So they're pretty quick to administer. The questions that you're looking at right now were piloted with students. So we actually piloted these measures, administered the surveys, and then met with kids after the class and interviewed them and tried to flag any problematic language or words that were kind of confusing or troublesome for the kids. So we did pilot the measures. And here's an example of just one. So you can see this is one that is a choose the one item that best describes your experience. This is question 10 from the small group survey. And doing next. So what's kind of cool about these two is that we've actually digitized both of these surveys. So any middle school teacher now in SFUSD can, just by sending a link out to their entire class, kids can then take the survey online. So we created it in Google Forms, so the kids can go and they can quickly just respond on their iPads or computers. And then what's really cool is that the teachers can automatically, within a few minutes, see that data for their entire class displayed within minutes of their students taking the survey. So because we felt like that'd be a lot more helpful for teachers than to like look at a spreadsheet of students' answers. So here's an example of an actual display. So this is for a class of SFUSD middle school students who took the small group practical measures survey on one occasion. Sorry, the text is kind of small and hard to see, but that's actually one of the things that we're interested in, is how best to display this data for teachers. Pie charts, bar charts, should there be percentages, how should the colors look? I wanted to give you actually just a second, just to maybe, any comments on what, can people read this text?
No.
Okay, so we won't do comments on what the display
Well, you can read it for us.
This one says, so this is question 10 that was on the previous slide, question 10 from the small group survey. So if you're curious, it's question 10. It was, what was the purpose of working in a small group today? Choose the best item that describes your experience. And at 81.8% was share the different ways students in my group were solving a problem. All the way down to 4.5% investigate a mathematical idea, 4.5% solve a problem using the steps the teacher taught us, and then 9.1, check with my group members to see if my answers were correct. So looking at this display, you can start to get hopefully a sense of like how the kids made sense of their experience engaging in discourse in this math lesson. And this gives the teacher immediate feedback on how that discussion went and how students kind of took it up. I'm going to show you, hopefully this one's a little easier to see, a little better. This is the exact same question, exact same data, but displayed in more of a bar chart. And you can see the data broken down. However, there are some differences. The previous one was percentages. This one we actually have student numbers, so 18 kids actually provided that answer. And the reason we have these displayed differently, we have this data displayed differently, is that, like I mentioned, we're really interested in knowing how best to display the data for teachers. How would teachers like to see the data displayed? Is it in bar chart form, pie chart, percentages, whole numbers? What makes most sense to them? We've conducted a few interviews and focus groups with both middle school teachers and middle school math coaches to try and solicit feedback on a series of displays like the ones that I just showed you, just to get their feedback. And so far, I mean, what we've learned is bar charts are better than pie charts. Percentages and whole numbers together make most sense. And that the displays can tell you some things and they can't tell you others. So that's kind of some initial sort of things that we've learned from here. Last thing I'll mention is that it's possible that teachers in looking at these displays might sort of recognize some areas in which they'd like to sort of grow and change their practice, alter their practice. However, what we're particularly interested in is how coaches might embed these data displays into their ongoing coaching conversations with their teachers. So I've started to talk with coaches about, have you had these conversations? How did they go? How did you prepare for those conversations? How would you prepare differently for those conversations depending on the teacher, depending on what the data actually looked like in the class? And lastly, the connection to the problem-solving cycle is that from this data that we're getting, we might start to identify areas that we would like to focus on in our work with these teachers in the problem-solving cycle with our middle school teacher leaders. That's that.
Yes.
Sorry. That was the
Thank you.
condensed version.
That's good. Yay.
Well, let's thank our presenters and then open it up to Q&A.
So one question I have is, the back here, is I think girls tend to not to speak up in groups talking about math. I wonder when you guys do the study, is there any specific sort of focus to address how to facilitate between mixed groups with both boys and girls?
So with the surveys?
No, just like generally when you guys are doing this EU-based studies.
Either one of us could answer that question. A huge component of collaboration days that we do with our middle school teachers and that we do with all teachers in San Francisco is attending to equitable participation for that reason. There is not just girls, there are very strong perceptions that some kids are good in math, and as soon as we have classrooms that validate that, then kids who see themselves as good in math are going to take the risks and participate, and kids who see themselves as not good in math are less likely to take the risks and participate. So it's important, not just in middle school, but starting with our very youngest students and through high school, that every professional development space holds the expectation of equitable participation. What does that mean? It means things like students might have assigned roles. It means that teachers are looking at student work. It means that we have very clear conversations about racialized and gender-based outcomes with teachers, and in our coaching conversations work to ask those, unearth some of those questions and those patterns. So yes, that wasn't one of the things that was featured here because we happened to be looking at a video of three 8th grade girls. But do you want to add anything to that?
So another focus of the teacher leader work for the coming school year will be a stronger focus on equity. And so as I mentioned, we're planning our summer institute right now. And that will be a kind of major theme for that work, and tying in with the course collaboration days that Lizzie mentioned that are for all of our middle school teachers, and the work that teacher leaders are doing back at their sites.
A teacher I was speaking with on Friday about the practical measures actually expressed an interest in seeing her data broken down by gender.
So that relates to a question I was going to ask about how are you seeing teachers use the practical measures? And I also know it's a little bit early to be asking that question.
So, I mean, the one teacher I spoke with on Friday has administered the survey on multiple occasions, and what she has done and she's able to do is to download her students' responses and all the displays, and then she can actually track how the data has changed over time. So she's administered it on multiple occasions, and so she's starting herself to kind of decide how she wants to look at it, how often she wants to administer, what types of comparisons she wants to do and is interested in.
So is she making shifts in her instruction between administrations?
I can't say that yet. I think she is, yeah.
That's the goal.
Yeah, I know. I also know it might be too early to be asking the question. So I think there are other questions.
I'm curious to know how you are going to help that teacher or whoever, whenever, when groups make mistakes. Well, what's your training idea behind helping kids get it right, I guess is, because I wonder all the time about groups when I teach. And I wonder when the groups get it wrong, and if I don't get it in time, what's the fallback, I guess?
That's a really great question. That's a question a lot of our teachers ask. And I think one response that we give is kind of a reframing around what is the purpose of the students doing the mathematics. Is the purpose for them to come up with a single right answer, or is the purpose for them to make sense of the mathematics through the process of moving towards a right answer? So I think one of the things that's really powerful about this video is that these students don't reach what might be labeled a correct answer, the rule that actually does connect the figure number and the tiles, and they are really making sense of how do you think about slope? What does that mean? What's the relationship between the figure and the number of tiles, and how do we make those connections? And so I think that what we are trying to do in the math department is help teachers think about how do I guide groups not so much to get the right answer, but how do I guide groups to make sense of the mathematics in this process of doing this task, which also gets them to the right answer, but that's not the purpose of, the purpose is the learning rather than the purpose being the answer. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm just wondering whether this specific task would bother me because of the fact that there is one right answer, right? Or there are different representations of the right answer.
Yeah.
I can see other tasks where there are lots of right answers. And so that's
So I think there's more to the curriculum that helps. You know, the way you start with an apprentice task and go through an expert task, and the times when they share both representations and answers. So, but
I was actually going to say, we're also only seeing 4 minutes of the video, so we haven't seen the students test the instances and see that it doesn't work, you know. So that's the idea of like the evidence that we have and keeping the focus on the focus. But I would say in terms of the professional development emphasis, because the Common Core is asking for a balance of conceptual understanding.
Right.
Procedural fluency. Fluency is still in there.
Right.
If nobody's saying that there isn't an equation that doesn't match, you know, that doesn't match these figures.
Right.
Which one did I miss? Conceptual understanding,
Procedural fluency.
Application.
There's one more. There's one more.
There is one more. Oh my
There is
gosh,
one more.
this is my cold. I'm blaming it on the cold medicine.
Disposition.
No, conceptual understanding, procedural, whatever. It'll come to me in a second. It'll like pop and I'll yell it. But and problem solving. I think because of the fact that we have so much history of kids being taught answer getting and how to teach algorithms, we need fewer instances of teachers grappling with that. We need more instances of teachers trying to make sense of how will I engineer the situations or orchestrate the situations in my classroom where kids are doing deep conceptual learning. Because that's the harder thing to orchestrate.
Yeah.
So, you know, I do many parent nights in my role, and one of the strong critiques of the Common Core is that we don't care about the answer. That's not the case.
Right.
And so it always feels really important to sort of hold that idea that procedural fluency, you know, we don't want engineers who would build an equation such that the bridge they built would collapse or whatever. Like, you know, nobody's trying to say that. But in order to know what questions to ask and what equation to develop and what are the variables you're going to consider, you have to have deep conceptual understanding. So I apparently had a soapbox moment there.
I have one other thought, which is that the group time is the grappling time, and then there's the closure piece to the lesson as well, where students are sharing their thinking with their colleagues within the class, and so that's an opportunity for the kind of for that, you know, that correct equation and a pathway to it to be shared by students with their peers, and so that there's. I think that one way that we think about that difference is there's the grappling time, and then there's the kind of the closure or summary of the math of the day that can be a place for teachers to kind of meet that need for them that is very important and feels very important to them, of students seeing the pathway or a pathway to the right answer.
This may not be within the focus of the research study, but I'm just curious about, like, I appreciate the value of the common experience with the video-based discussion, because I think constraining that is really important and meaningful to the teachers, but I can also see the value in teachers seeing their own videos over time in order to see how their representations of practice with those students changes and deepens. And so I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity and component for teachers to reflect on their own videos rather than a pre-selected part. Yeah.
This is one of
They
the
do?
teachers who
Okay.
is in
Well,
the.
But do they reflect on their videos too?
Their own personal ones?
They
Yeah.
choose clips from their own if they're relevant to their focus, but it's not the reflection you're talking about from other projects.
But there are conversations in the district now about the coaches taking those videos and using those videos on the
With
basis
the-
of their one-on-one
That's
work
cool.
with the teachers.
Yeah, one step we glossed right over was that we model it, the VBD, debrief it, then they go into a work session that's site-based that includes looking at clips, long clips from their class to pick a short clip that they'll use with their peers. So that's good.
Thanks, this is fascinating. I'd like to historicize the practical questions, and I suspect they're giving you very valuable information that creates all kinds of new feedback loops in terms of what might be beneficial to students in this group learning process. I'm curious where the practical questions might go in a brainstorming way 5 years out. Will they become fewer because those communication processes will, for learning, already be built into the classroom in new ways because of this? Or will they grow in number because they're a very useful feedback tool that will that has enhanced the learning in the classroom in all kinds of ways? Will they change in the what's practically wanted?
So that's a
This
great
is their
question.
third iteration already.
Yeah, and this project actually started in collaboration with 2 other universities and other school districts. And through a lot of meetings, we explored a number of different possible practical measures, and we landed on these 2 as ones that are starting points. And they can serve as models for the value of this type of a quick turnaround. We think of it as taking the temperature of the class. So we started with a number of them, we landed on these 2, and certainly there's room for expansion.
And 5 years out will be an iterative process relative to today's questions.
It could be.
I think what we were trying to land on with the so the other universities are Vanderbilt and the University of Washington, and what we were trying to land on with the cognitive interviews with kids is, do the kids understand the questions in the way in which we're trying to understand the context of the classroom? So if the kid thinks that there's a right answer that makes their teacher look good, we had this false positive where the kids chose that answer. So this iteration, they're presumably more neutral. So it gives us better information. So right now we're trying to learn what is that better information. The other 2 districts that are doing it are Louisville and Nashville. Is that right?
There's a couple more districts too, because Tom Smith came in with like 2 or 3 different districts down in Riverside, so it's grown.
But those are 2.
Those were the 2 starting points.
We've also shared exactly these questions with a group of 9 districts that we collaborate in California through a group called Math in Common. And I know, for example, that the city of Sacramento has taken up for all of their math classrooms a version of this, not exactly like this. So I think the idea is, as with a rich task, you take it, you iterate on it, you make it match your context because you're trying to learn something about your kids.
One coach who I was talking with a couple of weeks ago was talking about how she wants to look at the data for teachers in response to just 1 or 2 of the questions from the entire survey that she feels are really have a equity focus, because she thinks that's something she really wants to work on with her teachers. So that's sort of a use that she sees to the measures herself. Yeah.
And one more thing I want to throw in there is this collaboration actually brought in the research and evaluation team as well. So they've been working, thank you much, that they've been working with to develop the displays and to develop the ways of getting the information back out to teachers quickly and in various ways of sorting the data so that they're available to district level people in some aggregate form, and to the coaches and to the individual teachers.
For middle school. For high school, we just shared them. Here's a survey, try it out.
Right.
So part of the research study is formally in middle school, but there are other people using it.
When I was a high school math teacher, what was very important to me was studying the language that the students used. So I was looking for when they would use math language. When I found that, I also tried to pay attention to did they use that language to explain the concepts to other students in their group. I had cooperative groups in the old days, remember those? And if they did it, did they then drop the math language and use their own kid-friendly language? And when I found that, I used to try to ask them to become the teacher. So I could go so far explaining a concept, and then the students could come up and do it in their own language, and kids got that underlying concept. So the math language that's the value, that's another value of having video footage for the teacher to reflect on, and the students themselves. But it's tedious work. Who knows?
Yeah, it's easy.
Yeah, man.
It's life's work.
Well, thank you, everybody, for fully engaging. And thank you, San Francisco team, for driving down, and I hope it's not bad going back out.
It's an hour drive. at this
You
time.
just gotta enjoy the ride.
We'll have some snacks. There are copies of the Dimensions of Teaching and Learning if you all
Oh,
want to look. It's also on our
yeah.
website.
Nice to meet you.
So are you guys having your start?
Rebecca's on it. Did you go to
I'm on a different project called the Hollyhock Fellowship Program, which we work with high school teachers who teach in high school. So average
Laura, that was
80% of the students qualified for free and reduced lunch fees. So use the video-based discussion model.
No, it's almost always here. It's only if we get free admission sign-ups.
The goal of we have a overarching goal is teacher retention and sustainability in schools that typically see a lot of turnover. But we have
canceled one last year, but then we posted this one, realized
create equitable learning opportunities for the classroom and build a community. This network is working.
I like this talk. I think we should do it again next fall.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm really happy to have you here.
Yeah, it was
Good. We know we're not.
But the video.
Yes.
Hi, Jess.
Yes.
We saw the video over and over again. Teachers are all across the country, so they videotape themselves. We have an app.
Oh, sorry.
Hard that is.
We did. We
That's why it was Zoom.
How much
Cynthia told me
With the pre-K
Which is Friday.
I know it's both, like, it is, you can students' body language says a lot about how they use.
I didn't,
Yeah, it's super helpful.
We're special with all the AI things going on, it's actually very
I mean, we're
trying to analyze the audio automatically and find social patterns.
That's fine. So there's a couple things. There's a tool online but it's like looking for barriers between
Audio's on that, and then identify key things
you might be
So,
trying to analyze. That'd be
what are
very
our-
helpful.
Not on the.
Yeah.
So in terms of
Only
the
if
curriculum,
they-
how does
Audio
the-
I mean, it has things too on the audio. That's a big
So that one goes here really well, but that's another.
Oh, that's great.
Impacts.
Because I'm gonna miss it.
Things that work.
And I was talking to a student today, and they were asking me about it, and I said, where people physically are in the room, and how they engage with each other, but,
Yes.
And we're looking for.
I was going to.
Normal class teaching experiences. So that also, where's the teacher
You
plays
probably know
themselves, how
where
they
they
are.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
You know from volunteering to fix it.
And that's what we will, I mean, we're supporting that. Is that each other?
Makes sense to
I would say the professional t-shirts are
So-
really, I'm not good at it. It's very,
You realize how hard it is.
I know, they are there to help me, so I don't have to teach. She needs.
All right, well, it's nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you, it was a great project.
Oh, thanks.
Yes.
We're not exclusive.
Okay,
We
I
try to
better
go
give
on
you
and
a
on.
sign.
And I
Card, since we're doing.
I think I've done that, like, shared resource. I did my master's in '97, so 20 years ago. Oh my goodness.
Understanding process.
Yes. And where'd you do your PhD?
Right, these guys.
Yeah, see you later, Lois.
Nice to meet you. And then you again.
You always.
Likewise.
Again.
I checked back at my email that I sent you another deal. I had to follow up.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, I'm happy you were learning, but doing my good job right now.
Oh,
You're a professional.
My response to email time is slow.
yeah, I just talked with MIT open
Yeah, I
course
have
for
a
today,
postdoc
and
there today, and she's.
potential for a pilot for
Plato?
graduate degree in 3 languages.
Nice.
And this